Good afternoon again, folks. My name is Greg Mazzola, and I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Communications at Colby Sawyer College. And I'd like to welcome all of you to today's State of the College event with President Sue Stuebner. Just a couple of housekeeping rules. Given the large number of attendees that we're expecting this afternoon, your video and audio will not be enabled. In addition, during this session, it will be recorded. And as attendees, you will have the opportunity to submit questions, both via the chat function and the Q&A function. If at all possible, we'd love for you to use the Q&A function. It's just simpler for us to read and use that option. On that note, I would love to take this opportunity to turn over this afternoon's event to President Sue Stuebner.
Thanks, Greg, and welcome to all of you to today's State of the College. One of the main themes that I want to share with you over the next several minutes is that while we're living in a time of great uncertainty and anxiety due to COVID-19 and the coronavirus, that the state of the college is solid and strong, and I think you'll get a chance to see that as we go through here. Really proud of the way the college community has rallied despite some of the challenges that we have faced due to the coronavirus, and the basic foundation of the institution is solid, and looking forward to sharing all of that with you today. So thanks so much for joining us. Wanted to just start with COVID-19 and how the college has responded to the pandemic and unprecedented times. The opening of school was the beginning of September, although we had students arrive as early as mid-August. Those who lived outside of the New England area were asked to come back 2 weeks early to quarantine. We had a very aggressive testing strategy in place where all faculty, staff, and students were tested with the nasal swab upon arrival, and students would quarantine until they got their negative test. Meals were delivered to them while they waited for their results. We're very, very grateful and thankful to our partner, New London Hospital, who helped tremendously with this first round of testing in August and early September. Once we got through that first round of testing, we then began classes and did a second round of testing. We did all students again through a pooled saliva approach. And now we're into a phase 3 of testing where we are randomly testing students in groups of 30 to 40 each week, again in the pooled saliva approach, and that has been working well. We've been very, very fortunate. We've had 2 positive confirmed cases through the testing protocol. Both of those students have recovered and are back in classes. And so we've been very lucky in terms of the results of the testing and how it's gone. In terms of teaching and learning, we went with a 12-week semester. Typically our semester is 15 weeks long. We got permission from the Department of Education to shorten the semester. The classes are about 20 minutes longer to make up for that shorter period of time. And one of the reasons we did that is that we wanted to try to end the semester by Thanksgiving so that students would go home and then stay home until the spring semester rather than go home and then come back and potentially be exposed to the virus and bring it back to campus. So the 11 weeks on campus, and then the week after Thanksgiving, they'll have their reading days and their exams will be virtual. So that's how the semester will work. We're doing social distancing in the classroom. And so how it's working for several faculty, they're actually teaching students across 2 different classrooms for one course. They might have half the class with them face to face, and then they're zooming into the second classroom, which might be next door, or it could be in a different building. We tried to get them as close together as possible, where possible. We also have about 35 students that are learning remotely this semester due to health concerns that were confirmed. And so they are learning remotely. So a professor might be teaching half the class face-to-face, Zooming to the other half of the class, and then also have a few students remote that they have to teach all at once. So our faculty have a really heavy lift this semester. They've been phenomenal in terms of how they have risen to the challenge. It's been a stressful time for them. You know, several of them have reported that it's been a little bit challenging to get into the same rhythm that the semester typically would take. We did get a grant so that we have webcams across the campus, but those webcams are sometimes tippy and the audio is not always great. So we've been trying to get tripods and improve the audio with new microphones and do whatever we can to make the teaching and learning go as smoothly as possible. When the weather was a little bit warmer, some of the professors would have their classes outside so that they could teach everyone all at once, which worked well. Just in terms of policies and education, we certainly have policies around wearing masks, around travel, around visitors, around occupancy in different rooms. We've had a couple of student interns who've done some wonderful videos that are on a COVID-19 website, as well as have been shared through social media to help students understand why we have the policies that we do, as well as created a number of posters and different assets that we have put around campus so that students understand what the policies are and so they can adhere to them. Again, students have been really great about rising to these challenges in terms of adhering to the policies that we have. It's really been helpful. And right now we're also looking ahead to spring semester. We expect by November 1st to be able to report exactly what our plans are for the semester. But we're looking again at what kind of calendar, what kind of break, if any, and when we'll start that term. So those are some of the things that we've had to be addressing because of the coronavirus. I wanted to give you just a snapshot of our student body. These are our traditional students. We have approximately 800 undergrads this year. We had a really strong retention rate. We saw a number of our first year students last year return as sophomores this year. It was one of the highest rates we've had in a number of years. Our student body is about 12% diverse, domestic students of color. We have 27 states that are represented. 30% are Pell eligible and 40% are first generation. So that's just a little bit about who some of our students are in terms of our traditional population. We had about 235 students in our first year class this year. We had hoped it would be about 10 students higher, We did have a few more arrive, but then get a little bit skittish about COVID and end up leaving after initially moving in. So about 235 was our incoming number for first years this year. One of the things that we've been talking a lot about is how do we engage students despite the coronavirus and despite the fact that they have to be distancing and wearing masks and you know, separating themselves in order to stay safe. We had a virtual mountain day this year where students could participate and faculty and staff. There was an app that helped people keep track of their steps, and those that walked the equivalent of from Colby Sawyer to the top of Mount Kearsarge got to sign a banner, and there was a barbecue on a beautiful, it was a very sunny day, but a windy early fall brisk day to kind of close out that virtual mountain day challenge just a couple of weeks ago. Clubs and organizations are still meeting. Some of them are meeting in person, but some students, even if they're on campus, because of COVID, want to stay virtual. So I was just at student government last week or earlier this week, and there were probably about 30 students in the room, and then there were probably a dozen or so students that were on Zoom. So just like the faculty are having to do kind of a hybrid approach, clubs and organizations are doing the same, but they are meeting and they are doing the work of clubs and organizations. And we did have an activities fair at the beginning of the semester so that first year students could go to different Zoom breakout rooms to find out what all the different clubs and organizations that we are, and they still had an opportunity to sign up for those that of interest. We're still doing Wacky Bingo, which remains incredibly popular. There were 100 students on that the last time that we had it. And trivia nights, we kind of trade off with those, but students can count on those at least once a month. Student Activities has polled students about what kind of movies they would like to see. And so we've had movie nights in Sawyer Theater where we can socially distance, but still get a number of students in the auditorium to be able to watch movies. And then Dining Services has been doing some pop-ups with different kind of fun snacks, or they did a chai tea one recently, as well as guacamole and chips one that was very popular. So just trying to find ways to allow the students to socialize despite the fact that we have to have social distancing and be wearing masks and that kind of thing. I wanted to talk a little bit about our partnership with Dartmouth-Hitchcock and our pivot to the health sciences. This is going extremely well. In our incoming class this year, we had 90 new nursing students, which exceeded the goal that we needed to have as part of our partnership with Dartmouth-Hitchcock. We also have about 38 students in our Masters of Nursing program. We've added 2 new tracks. The first one was a clinical nurse leader track. And what happened there is that Dartmouth-Hitchcock initially asked us to start with that track because they hoped to create a number of positions in that field. But they were unable to add as many of those leader roles as they had wanted. So we did add new tracks in nurse educator, as well as nurse management and executive leadership. And these, as I mentioned, with 38 students, have been very popular. Last year, we just had 4 students in the MSN program, so a really big jump there. We have some new bachelor programs that have new students enrolled in them: addiction studies, social work, healthcare administration, health sciences, and medical lab sciences. And these are all fields that Dartmouth-Hitchcock has asked us to take a look at and try to increase the number of graduates in those areas. We are working very closely with Dartmouth-Hitchcock on an Associates in Health Science, which is part of a program for advancing their employees from certain positions to the next step on the ladder. And we have 21 students that are enrolled in the Associates in Health Sciences this semester. And then we also have 2 degree completion programs, an RN to BS and a respiratory therapy or RT to BS. And those again are programs to try to help fill the need up at Dartmouth-Hitchcock. In return for all these steps that we're taking, Dartmouth-Hitchcock has pledged over $3 million to the college over 4 years. And a number of our graduates are going on to Dartmouth-Hitchcock then to alleviate some of their workforce pressures that they have. So it's really been a win-win. Our nurses still do their clinical rotations either up at Dartmouth, or sometimes the Dartmouth folks are coming down. We have a second lab now in Mercer. And so sometimes the clinicians are coming here to work with our students as well, to do simulations either here or up at Dartmouth. But this is a really important initiative to differentiate the college in the marketplace. As many of you know, the number of high school students over the next 10 years is projected to decline by as much as 30%. So the number of traditional undergraduates that we can count on is likely to be in that 800 to 850 range. And having these these professional learning programs is really critical for the college in terms of having just a diversity of programs as well as diversity of revenue. Just wanted to share briefly with you some accolades or outcomes. The U.S. News and World Report, we have been 7th or 8th in the regional colleges north for the last couple years. We're a best value institution, which is always great in terms of communicating with prospective students in terms of what they're getting for their investment. And U.S. News and World Report added a new category this year called social mobility, which essentially looks at graduation rates for Pell eligible students. And so we're very proud of being 5th in our category in terms of our ability to graduate Pell eligible students. For the class of 2019, they had a 99% placement rate and within 6 months of graduation. And our most recent class, the class of 2020 of our nurses, had a 97% pass rate on the NCLEX, which is far exceeds the state and national average. So our students are really doing great things in terms of outcomes and transformation here at the college. Like many organizations, Colby Sawyer has taken a much closer look at equity, diversity, and inclusion over the past several months. We have added an equity, diversity, and inclusion task force, which includes faculty, staff, alumni, and students. They actually have a town hall tomorrow at 11 for anyone who's interested in hearing about what's happening with the task force. They're looking at policies and procedures, looking at curriculum, looking at hiring practices, looking at other ways that the college can improve upon equity and inclusion across the organization. Thanks to a grant, we were able to hire a diversity and inclusion fellow who is helping the task force with some research on some of the initiatives, as well as meeting with students, and has just been a great addition to the institution. We've increased training for faculty and staff. On September 3rd, we had required training for all of our faculty and staff. That was really a great day of conversation. We had an hour of a Zoom session followed by an hour of conversation in small groups. And we have about 24 pages of ideas that came out of those small group discussions on how the college can improve in equity and inclusion across the institution. Our African Student Association put on a really powerful Black Lives Matter protest and vigil just recently. And each vice president has been charged with looking at one or two concrete ways that they can make sure that the policies and procedures within their area are anti-racist and are not excluding anyone on an implicit or explicit way. So these are some of the things that we're doing. It's, you know, certainly a process that has to be ongoing. It's not something that's going to be fixed in a short period of time, but it's something that has become a priority for the organization and one that I will make sure stays a top priority for us. And then finally, I just wanted to share a little bit about our financial foundation. Things are looking very good in this area right now. We have had a balanced budget for several years, but certainly for the last two. Our endowment has just recently reached its all-time high at $42.4 million as of September 30th. The Department of Education assesses every organization that receives federal financial aid, and a 3.0 is the highest score that an institution can receive. And just based on our most recent audit that we shared with the board this week, we're at 2.9, so that's far better than we had been in previous years. We've received over $3 million in private bequests this year. And in January, we've been notified of the largest gift that the college is ever going to have received, that we will be receiving that gift. And so there's really a lot of good things happening on the financial side. We're still a small college operating in a highly competitive landscape, so we have to be diligent in our efforts. But I'm pleased to be able to share these foundational elements that have really come a long way. So those were the highlights I wanted to be sure to share with you folks, and I'm sure there's some questions, and I wanted to be sure that we left plenty of time for Q&A. The senior leadership team is actually on the session with us, and so I'm not sure if we're gonna be able to see them or not, but in addition to Greg Mazzola, we have Dan Parrish, who's the Vice President for College Advancement. We have Laura Sykes, who's our Academic Vice President and Dean of the Faculty. We have Robin Davis, who is our Vice President for Student Development and Dean of Students. And I think that, do we have others? Here we go.
I've just added Anna and Laura, and I'm searching for Robin, and she will appear soon.
Robin is there, and Anna Miner is our VP for Admissions and Financial Aid.
And I'm searching for Karen Bonewald. Just give me 1 minute, and I will, when I find her, I will make her live as well.
And Karen is our Vice President for Finance and Administration. So,
And Sue, if you unshare your screen,
yep,
for folks who are unfamiliar with Zoom, it might make it easier for them to see all of us. There we go.
absolutely.
I think I have the whole group. Did I miss anyone?
That's everybody.
We
Great,
got everybody, Dan.
great.
So Sue, thank you for that really interesting presentation and overview. We do have some really interesting questions to start this portion of the event. So someone writes in that and talks about how important nursing is to the institution and asks the question if we're finding more students enrolling in the nursing program or fewer students due to the COVID-19 health pandemic.
Well, as I mentioned, we had a record, we had 90 incoming students that actually are declared nursing. So for this year, we're seeing really strong interest. But I'll let Anna say a little bit more about what you're seeing in terms of just interest on prospective students in health sciences and nursing.
We've definitely seen an incredible amount of interest and inquiry, as well as visitors onto campus. We know that our partnership with DH gave us quite a bit of publicity as well as advertising. And so, the pass rates that we've had to back up the quality of our program have certainly been publicized very well and have attracted the attention of a lot of families. This year, because of our partnership with Dartmouth, we were able to admit more nurses. So we had two things going on. We did have the fact that COVID was happening, but we also had a year where we were able, due to our partnership, to expand our program. So it's hard to say whether COVID actually played a larger role in it, but this was definitely a tremendous year for us, and we are already seeing quite a bit of interest for the coming year as well.
Great, thank you, Anna. Another question that's come in is related to our majors or programs, athletic or otherwise, is there any plans to discontinue programs, academic or athletic, due to the pandemic, economy, or other factors?
Well, as many of you know, we've had to make some really difficult decisions in previous years. And so I think as hard as those years were, they have prevented us from having to make some of the really hard decisions that a number of institutions are making right now. There's a number of public institutions that are facing pretty severe budget cuts, and you're seeing some of the privates cutting programs as well. But we do not have any plans to reduce programs.
Great. A question about Colby Magazine, Colby Sawyer Magazine. Will this continue via United States Postal Service? Dan, do you want to take that one?
Sure. The answer is yes, and you should be receiving the next issue later this fall, probably in early December. Well, to be honest, depending on where you live and what's happening with the speed of the mail, sometime in early to mid-December, but you'll see it soon. Greg's team has done a really great job capturing a little bit of what Sue talked about today with the college's response to the pandemic. You'll see some really great imagery about that, but also some really good articles and perspectives from people, and then perspectives of alumni working in healthcare. So there's some really good information in there.
Great, thank you, Dan. And I'm going to toss this next one your way as well. Just curious, when will Colby Sawyer receive the largest financial gift?
And the questioner said that his cell phone was ringing and he couldn't hear it. We'll take that. We'll receive that gift in January, just after the new year. There are some commitments and legal things that we'll wait to see unfold, and then we'll know the value, and we'll have it in hands in 2021.
Great, thank you, Dan. Sue, for you, a question around the spring semester. I think this individual may have missed some of your presentation, but what will the spring semester look like for students, and how might it look different than this fall semester?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'll let Laura chime in here too. You know, one of the things that we know for sure is that there will not be a spring break, similar to the fall break, but we are likely going to have some break days. You know, one of the things that we saw this semester is that students and faculty just need some breathers, and the longer class sessions combined with the condensed semester is just a really fast pace. And so we'll likely have a day here or there that will be off so that they can have a breather. Laura, do you want to talk a little bit about what the classroom might look like, because what we've learned?
Sure. Thanks, Sue. Just another thing, we'll probably start a bit later than we had originally anticipated to, and we're working out those details now for the academic calendar, but we have already applied for and received, again, the semester, a 13-week calendar rather than a 15-week calendar from the Department of Education. So now we just need to work out what that start date will be. In terms of the classrooms, one of the things we learned is that there is some difficulty in managing 2 classrooms, and some of the students and faculty aren't crazy about it. And so in the spring semester, we'll probably take a more individualized approach for faculty to be able to have the option to do more of a hybrid approach than to have the 2 classrooms. And they'll be looking at that really on a class-by-class basis to see what works. So if a class is small enough that it can all fit in one classroom, then we anticipate that they'll meet as usual. But the ones for which one class won't fit in the classroom, some may choose to continue the 2 classroom model, and others may choose to do more of a hybrid experience. But the one thing that's certain is that all of the students who are on campus will be with their professors at least 1 day a week. The other change in the spring semester will be that we're going to go back to our regular calendar matrix rather than having the longer classes. We found that it was, especially with everybody wearing masks, the instructors and the students, the longer classes were really challenging for folks. And so we can make up that time with outside classwork and not have to have the longer classes that we did this semester.
Great, thank you, Laura. Anna, how about this one for you? How does the upcoming class look in terms of numbers, with virtual college fairs and travel restrictions in place and impacting admissions?
That's a great question. So due to COVID, we did not have a spring 20 or fall 20 travel season. And so that traditional cultivation with the come up and rising seniors was a little bit different for us this year. Fortunately for the college, we've been working for a number of years building up our inquiry pool with sophomores and juniors. So we've been in touch with most of the students who are rising seniors at this point over the last year or 2 years, which is a great benefit at this point. Because of the lack of standardized testing, and that is where we source a lot of seniors as well. We've been challenged there. And so we've done a lot more digital outreach. We've done a lot more digital advertising. We've engaged with some new partners to help us connect with high school students in different ways and through different platforms. In collaboration with Greg's team, with marketing and communications, we have done more to do that digital piece to extend our outreach where we can't necessarily travel. We were really quick to establish virtual visits, and we had a wonderful virtual tour set up, which we recently updated again. And so we do have a lot of families engaging with us. We have had tours, and they are very limited. So we ended tours prior to COVID hitting in February, and then resumed those tours with very strict protocols in place and with very limited numbers in July. And our numbers are actually excellent as far as visitorship is concerned, with some modifications and protocols in place. So we are seeing a lot of gratitude from prospective families, and we're hoping that certainly helps create some buzz for us, people coming back and saying we had a great experience with Colby Sawyer. So we really are working hard to engage families. We're having sessions in the evenings so that families can join us and join not only the admissions counselor, but a student ambassador to do a virtual live tour of campus. So it's interesting. We're adapting and modifying, but we're moving and shaking as fast as we can to engage families and to really make sure that Colby Sawyer stands out to families at this time.
That's great. Thank you. Next question. It's a two-parter. First one for Sue. Will anything else be done for the class of 2020? And for you, Dan, do you hope to have an in-person alumni weekend next year? Why don't we start with you, Sue?
Yeah, I think the class of 2020 certainly, like the class of 2021, got sort of the short end of the stick in terms of having to have remote learning and not virtual commencement. Once we're able to be together, I think we would love to do some kind of special celebration for them at our homecoming or an alumni weekend of some kind. Potentially, we haven't even bounced around ideas, but we would probably work with members of the class to see what would be most meaningful to them, because it was certainly an abrupt end to their time here on campus to switch to remote learning and then have to have things virtual for the rest of their time. So we would work with members of the class once we can be back together face to face and try to do some kind of special celebration at a future homecoming of some kind.
And all I'll add is that I also sent a text answer to that message. My email address is in that answer. So for the person who asked it, definitely get in touch with us. Tracy Austin, who's the Director of Alumni and Community Relations, and I talked a lot about it. First of all, we definitely want to host reunion and homecoming in person next year. But as you saw on the screen, Laura was crossing her fingers in hopes that that would happen. And so we'll all see where we are in terms of the pandemic, but that's definitely our plan. And we absolutely want to do something with and for the class of 2020. And I would love to work with members of that class to make sure that we get it right and we do something that the class wants. So feel free to email me and get in touch, and I'd love to talk about it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Robin, do students have to stay on campus all the time? And if the answer is no, are many leaving campus over the weekends? And you are on mute. There you go.
Students do not have to stay on campus all the time. We have said to them that we want them to limit their travel to within New London unless it's essential travel outside of New London. So we do have students who will go home. Or go outside of the New London area to work. We do have many students who work to be able to finance their education here. We have students who are in clinicals away, who are interning away. Family emergencies have come up, doctor's appointments, and so we do have students who are not here on the weekends. But again, we're really emphasizing outside of New London travel should be for essential purposes only in order for us all to stay and remain safe and be able to finish out these next few weeks on campus learning.
Great, thank you. Robin, we're going to stay with you. There's a question that came in. I think this individual, we've got a couple of folks who I think missed the portion about Sue talking about Mountain Day. So can you just briefly talk about the difference we're seeing this year in Mountain Day, obviously being a virtual event?
Right. So Mountain Day, as we all know, is one of the bedrocks of our culture at Colby Sawyer. And so it was really important for us to have some kind of a Mountain Day, even though being together the way we normally do would, not be allowed or even safe these days. So one of the big things about that makes Mountain Day for our students different than the way it used to be is the Mountain Day t-shirt and tie-dyeing the Mountain Day t-shirt. So we started doing tie-dye days in smaller groups really from the moment students started to come back. And so we would have a series of them. And then we launched a virtual Mountain Day. So some folks may be familiar with some of the virtual physical fitness challenges that have become popular on the internet, and we signed up with one of those to do that. So our community members could track their progress, and with a Mountain Day challenge that was, basically the equivalent of, what the mileage would be from Colby Sawyer to the top of Kearsarge and back again, and kind of like if people are familiar with like the fitness trackers, and you try and have so many steps per day. So that was our challenge, was, the steps or the mileage would be what it would be to get to the top of the mountain and back. And then we also did Finisher Fridays. So people who signed up for that, once they hit that mileage marker, we asked for them to take a selfie with them in their tie-dye shirts and submit that. We had a banner. Another part of Mountain Day is, as you know, getting to the top of the mountain and signing the Mountain Day banner. So we had the Mountain Day banner down by the dining hall. And so once you finished on Finisher Fridays, sign the banner. We did raffles on Finisher Fridays to just kind of keep that momentum and that excitement up. We had a barbecue. That's kind of, I guess I would say maybe the fourth thing that makes Mountain Day is that Mountain Day barbecue. And so we had that as well. And we are all very much hoping that we can do that event in person next year, as it is so important to us.
Thanks, Robin. That's a lot of great activity. Thank you. So we all know how important the town of New London is to the success of the college. Can you talk a little bit about the collaborative experience we've had with the town during the fall semester related to the pandemic?
Sure. I think, first and foremost, I mentioned it early on, our relationship with New London Hospital and the testing that we did for phase 1 was really integral, and we're very grateful for the partnership with New London Hospital. New London as a town has a mask ordinance, and so just some of our students, the student interns, did some education around what that means for our students, and I think people have been appreciative that you can it's sort of a seamless approach of going from campus now into town, just wearing masks. There's been a lot of support from the townspeople of having the students back and just wanting the college to be healthy and vibrant. And so, it's just been great to have their support, and we're very lucky to be situated where we are, where the incidence of COVID is low, and where there's a lot of support for the college just in general.
Thank you, Sue. Robin, a lot of questions come up about athletics, not only in the fall semester, but also what our plans look like in the spring. I know we're a little bit a ways from that, but can you give some sense of what it might look, what athletics might look for the spring?
It's too early for us to talk about what it would look like in the spring so far, but I can talk about what it's been like for the fall and what's going into the decision-making for the spring, if that would help at all. So we are part of the GNAC Athletic Conference, and so that group, the presidents from that conference, the athletic directors, are meeting regularly to talk about, most recently they were talking about what winter sports might look like. They're talking about what spring sports might look like. Really, health and safety is the primary concern around that. And so what would it take to have safe seasons? So for the fall, certainly that was a big part of the conversations, and many of the schools in the GNAC and our athletic conference are 100% remote learning this year or this fall because of safety reasons. And not unlike pretty much almost all of the athletic conferences, the GNAC decided, you know what, we don't feel confident that we can get together and have, particularly contact sports in a way that makes us feel confident that it wouldn't be putting people at risk. So we have not done intercollegiate play this fall. What we have done and what we are doing is working with our athletes on strength and conditioning, on skill building, really a phased in approach to athletics, and scrimmaging within their own teams is what we're focusing on now. Again, as we look at what it would look like in the spring, some of the things that we have to keep in mind factoring in are NCAA regulations for one thing. How often do we test athletes? Whom do we play, really? Within the conference, our general schedule includes in-conference and out-of-conference games, and our conference really encompasses 5 states. So that's a lot to really think about, and there's a lot of different risk factors within those different states. So those are just, I'm trying to just give you bite-sized pieces about what's going into our decision-making for the spring. And
Right.
why I don't have an answer yet.
No, that's a great overview. Thank you, Robin. Anna, what percentage of our student body is male, female, and non-binary?
From an admissions standpoint, typically
Yeah.
we can talk about as students come in or have applied, and at times that changes over time. And typically we're seeing about a 75-25 ratio. That's very common. So from what we're seeing, that's been probably the last 5 or 10 years. That's been fairly steady. 75% female, 25% male.
Great, thank you. Sue, one of the big issues going into this fall was the campus community's ability to follow COVID protocol. I've got to imagine with such a low number of positive tests that you're really proud of the student body and its ability to, to follow the protocols. And can you talk a little bit about, your pride in seeing the student body respond so well?
Yeah, I'm really proud of the entire community. I mean, I think our students have done a great job. They have told us how much they want to be here. They are holding each other accountable in terms of wearing their masks and following the protocols that are in place. I'm incredibly proud of our faculty and how hard they're working to make the semester possible for our students. And really, since March, our staff has been working tirelessly behind the scenes to do all sorts of things to make it possible for our students to be here too. So I'm really proud of the entire community. There are a lot of schools that have not had the same success that we've had in terms of low incidence, and there are no guarantees. We just have to take it a week at a time and hope that we can continue to see the success that we've got. So yeah, very, very, very proud. And I know early on, a couple students and faculty said to me, if anyone can do this, Colby Sawyer can. And, it's been a great attitude to have that permeates across the campus.
Great, thank you. One of the issues you addressed in your presentation was the institution stepping up its efforts in terms of equity, diversity, and inclusion. What makes this such an important big picture priority for the college?
I think a couple things makes it a huge priority for the college. I think one, we're seeing just a national conversation around this that we have to be part of. We can't stick our heads in the sand and think that everything is just fine at Colby Sawyer. We need to address what's going on at our own campus and make sure that we're the best college that we can be. We did hear from some alumni earlier this summer about their own personal experiences with diversity and inclusion on campus, and some of those were, you know, really hard and painful to read, and we have to be able to do better. And so I think that combination of a national conversation, as well as knowing firsthand from some of our current students and alumni that that their experiences aren't as ideal as we would like them to be, you know, until every student can feel safe learning in the classroom, our work isn't finished. So we have to keep to be diligent on this, and it's going to take time. It's not going to change completely overnight, but it's something that I'm committed to keeping as a top priority. And you know, I know the vice presidents are in their areas as well.
Great, thank you. You referenced earlier in your presentation how consistent we have in ranking high within some of the really important U.S. News and World Report categories. How and why do you think this is important to the overall positioning of the college? Why is it relevant?
Why does it matter?
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of students, and maybe Anna can speak to this too, you know, a lot of families still reference U.S. News and World Report is one of the resources that they look at. You know, I think being a best value institution, there's so much concern around cost that the fact that we can say this is a place where your investment has value and there's going to be strong outcomes really matters. You know, students don't want to, parents and students want to know that they're going to graduate in 4 years and that they're going to be able to get a job after they're here. And so some of the measures that we did really well on signal that. So I think it's just important for reputation building and expanding our reach beyond just, you know, the local markets. But Anna, I don't know if you want to say anything more about, you know, how families use tools like that in their search processes.
Sure. And I would agree with exactly what you said. You know, different people value different sources of reviews and information. And so many families do still rely on that. And students use different favorite sites to do their research. So we partner with a number of different vendors who provide information to college-seeking families. So it's kind of what appeals to each individual family and what platform they like to use. So it's great that we have a really broad outreach regarding different programs. You know, there are ones that are specifically dedicated to nursing. There are ones that are specifically dedicated to smaller colleges. So there's a number of different ways that folks do their research. And so being part of that really gives us a broader reach.
Sue, we have time for one final question. We know that you often have interaction with college presidents throughout the state. Are there any kind of common threads or issues, concerns that have come up in some of these recent meetings?
I think one of the biggest questions we all have is just how long is COVID going to go on? You know, none of us have that crystal ball that tells us when a vaccine is going to be available and be available to our communities. And so how long are we going to have to kind of be flexible with how we approach teaching and learning and the whole enterprise? And for many of them, you know, and for us as well, you know, there's significant costs associated with operating with COVID, just testing and some supplies and you know, I think the total cost is close to $1 million when you look at what we've lost in revenue as well. So you know, it's important, even though we're able to balance our budget, it has a financial impact too. But just to get back to the essence of what Colby Sawyer is, we're not here with masks and you can see each other's whole faces and whether they're smiling or not smiling. I feel like the first year class, we still haven't even had a chance to get to know them very well yet, just because they've had to be masked so much of the time. So there's a whole group of students that we're eager to meet more fully for those of us that aren't with them in the classroom. So it's really this uncertainty is around COVID is
Right.
what predominates the conversation with presidents and how long we have to do this.
Great, thank you. We're up against the 1 o'clock hour. So I'd like to thank you for taking the time and presenting the state of the college today. Thank you to my colleagues, SLT members, for making yourselves available. And Dan, before we go, any final thoughts on upcoming events that you'd like to talk about for homecoming?
Sure. I'll post in the chat. In fact, I'll do it right now. The website, you can check out the homecoming website. If you've RSVP'd or you're an alumna or an alumnus, you've received emails with links to all of the events. This afternoon, we've got a great lecture on the impact of the pandemic and the flu. There's a lot of fun stuff happening tonight and tomorrow night, from an escape room to wacky bingo to a dance party hosted by our own Mama T and Michael Brown on campus. So there'll be a lot of good stuff happening. Tomorrow, there's a lineup of really good discussions. Sue mentioned one of them at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning on equity, diversity, and inclusion. But there's other discussions happening as well. So just check out that link that I posted in the chat. You can find more information there. And stay tuned to your email and social media in November. Kevin Finn, who's the new dean of the School of Nursing and Health Sciences, will be hosting an online conversation to tell folks about the work that we're doing with Dartmouth Hitchcock in more detail. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Dan, everybody else. And audience, we appreciate your thoughtful comments and questions, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Thanks so much for attending.